Oh man, we're having fun out here, guys. Time for another Joe Dissel parody, and this time we're again focused on the towns in Pittsburgh that have so much to offer that people don't really know about, or maybe they don't know enough about. And now we're going to talk about the town of Sewickley. Wow, guys. Now, I don't know that anything really about this area. I don't. I'm from Ohio. I'm from LA. However, I was at the laundromat this morning doing a few loads, and this lady next to me who had an inordinate amount of purple socks. I don't know what was going on there. A huge amount of purple socks. She told me about Sewickley. And so this video is going to be about the history and some of the things that are going on there that make it a special place in the Pittsburgh area. Now, Sewickley was settled in 1750 and incorporated in 1772, which is a longer time than most of the communities in this area. They would have been settled and incorporated much faster. However, Sewickley was battling some internal political turmoil at the time. You had the original J.R. Sewickley, who founded the town, and then there was a group of upstarts that didn't think they had to incorporate, led by a guy named Olaf Costanega back in 1750, 60, right in there. And he said, we don't need to incorporate. We're going to expand bigger than Pittsburgh. And once we're bigger than Pittsburgh, then we're going to have the county seat here. Then we're going to have the state capital here. And then we'll incorporate, which seemed to be backwards. But, you know, he came from a small town in the Austrian countryside. And he was abandoned by his parents from Spain who were on vacation. And they were so fed up with him that when he was 7 years old, they just left him in Germany. And he grew up with German parents. He was a foster kid. So he was always kind of rebellious, right? A lot of anger going on, which is understandable. It turned out later they found out that the parents had some mental challenges that made them do that. But it was a different time. They didn't have the care they have now, the diagnoses, the ability to determine if you are managing or dealing with mental challenges that we have now. I have a number of them. So this guy was like, no, we're not incorporated, but here you got J.R. Sewickley. Now, he came from England, and he came from a fairly noble family, so he was used to governance and sort of more of a collegial way of doing things. He wasn't used to rebellious upstarts, and frankly, he kind of looked down on them because in those days, if you were adopted, it was seen as almost a failing, right? But nonetheless, Olaf could care less about all that. He just was interested in getting his piece of the American pie, and using the government for his own personal gain, which to a certain extent, that's allowed. But this guy was over the top, and there was some also concern that he maybe had ties back to Germany, and that he was going to take the money that he made here in America and send it back to Germany. It was a whole lot of background on the situation. But nonetheless, dealing with the battle as it existed, Sewickley realized he had now this is interesting. He realized he had a intelligent, smart, resourceful foe. And he thought, here in the frontier, remember, when you're trying to survive out in the woods of Pennsylvania, and when I say that meaning everybody in Pennsylvania, at the time, in the 1700s, you used anything that you thought could benefit you. And Sewickley thought Olaf could be a real asset on his squad. So he approached him with the deal. He said, "Look, you come work for me. I'll make you a vice. What do they call in the city government? A minister, or let's say minister of trash. I'm going to make you the minister of trash, and you'll be responsible for managing the trash removal for the entire region, not just the city of Sewickley, but at that time the entire region." And Olaf, he knew Olaf would come back with a counter proposal. He just knew. So which way am I going? So he, sure enough, Olaf said, "Look, I don't want to be the trash guy. Let me be the Minister of Governmental Affairs." And that was a smart move, because it allowed him to have access to all of the goings on in the town and in the county. And in that way, he was able to maneuver himself into positions of power for the rest of his life, which again was very smart. So he was right. Sewickley was right. Olaf was a guy that had some cunning, had some ability to make things happen, and despite his, let's say, less than, his methods were less than honorable sometimes, but he also was able to make things happen. And sometimes things are not done in the most nice, neat manner. If you want to get them done, sometimes you got to throw down and tell people this is the way it's going to be. And if you don't believe me on that, look up President Johnson in the United States. That's exactly how he did everything, for a lot of things. So the town grew rapidly. Sewickley really grew rapidly in that time period, based on this tag team, this unlikely tag team of Sewickley and Olaf making things happen. And they I don't think 100% trusted each other. It's hard to tell from the way it was described to me. See, I don't, I'm just going by what the person at the laundromat told me about this story. So I don't really know. But anyway, Sewickley, the town, let's get into that. So Sewickley has been a healthcare leader in the Pittsburgh area for many years, because in those days up here on the frontier, you didn't have a lot of doctorate. And, sometimes you had to operate on yourself. Believe it or not, in the early days of the frontier, out in the woods of Pennsylvania, if you got hurt, you might have to operate on yourself, meaning you might have to set a splint on your own arm. You might have to remove snake bites if you can get to them. You might have to set your leg if it's broken, right? You might have to apply a tourniquet to your own. You were it. If you wanted to make it into town, into Sewickley or to P-Town or to Seven Fields or wherever the hell you were, if you wanted to get to town and it was a day's ride, well, that's up to you. Now, you probably didn't remove your own teeth, although I suppose you could if you wanted to save money and didn't have any money. But nonetheless, Sewickley coordinated the healthcare for the region, meaning they got doctors. They started their own hospital, started their own health center, really. And Sewickley has been a leader ever since in the healthcare field. And you might say that really was the direct result of Olaf and Old Man Sewickley working together, bribing doctors to come from other communities. They were basically corporate raiders. They were the New York Yankees, paying whatever they needed to get the right doctors, to get the help they needed. And they started winning championships in the healthcare field. So people knew when they were sick, they'd say, Mama, my ears are aching. My ears aching. And Mama would say, you get yourself down there over to Sewickley. You get yourself over to Sewickley right now, and you get that ear looked at. And they would go up to Sewickley. They'd get the ear looked at, guys, and that's where people, attributed their health to Sewickley. So to this day, if your ears are aching, you might want to head over to Sewickley. I don't care where you live. You might be in Cleveland. You might be in Des Moines, Iowa. You might be in Urbandale. Okay, you might be in West Des Moines. You might be in Clive. It's hard to say where you might be, but if you're aching, there's a very good chance you're going to want to head over to Sewickley because they're going to take care of you right now. Right now. And then they've got pictures on the wall of people doctoring themselves in the wild back in the old days. In the early days of photography, somebody took a bunch of pictures of people doctoring themselves in the wild, just like I was talking about. And you might say, well, why didn't the photographer put down the camera and pick up a splint and help a guy out? Why am I operating on myself out here in the woods, and here's a guy taking pictures? I mean, I know you were trying to make a name for yourself in the photography field, but I mean, put down the dang Panaflex and pick up a surgical tool and help me remove this bullet from my shoulder, okay? Help me remove this beaver tooth from my leg where he was gnawing on it, right? So, those photos, though, are in the health center there in Sewickley, and a lot of the hospitals in the area, and some of the doctors carry them in their wallet to remind themselves of the long history of healthcare in Sewickley. And so that's why the slogan has existed to this day, to this very day. If you're feeling sickly, head to Sewickley. And it holds up, guys, after dozens of years, after centuries, really, hundreds of years, it still holds up. If you be feeling sickly, you best get yourself over to Sewickley. They've modified it different ways, different phrases over the years, but that's been the slogan, guys. And I would say, if you are feeling sickly, get yourself to Sewickley. And that is another Joe Did So parody. Hey guys, come on back for more. We've got so many things to talk about these great communities. We've covered the southern side of Pittsburgh. We've got some neighborhoods inside the city. We've got some neighborhoods on the north side now. It's a neighborhood town. It's rich in history and tradition and accomplishment. And come on back. We're going to cover it all as much as we can. Yeehaw!